You probably think torture is about pain. That is the image your brain jumps to first. Chains, screams, blood. A body being pushed beyond its limits until it finally breaks. But the real answer is far stranger. Because the most successful torturers in history discovered something that modern psychology would only explain centuries later. Your body can endure an astonishing amount of suffering. Your mind is far easier to destroy. Imagine waking up in a stone room. No clock, no window, no explanation. Nobody tells you what happens next. How long would it take before fear starts filling the silence? Your brain is a prediction machine. Every second, it tries to answer a simple question. What happens next? When that answer disappears, anxiety begins to grow. When uncertainty becomes permanent, anxiety becomes terror. Ancient rulers understood this without neuroscience, brain scans, or psychology textbooks. They understood it because they watched it happen. Again and again. Across continents and centuries, punishment evolved into something much more sophisticated than simple violence. The goal was not merely to hurt people. The goal was to break the relationship between a person and reality itself. Case 1 begins in ancient Rome. Most people remember crucifixion as an execution method. It was. But it was also psychological warfare on a massive scale. Victims were often forced to walk publicly toward their punishment. Crowds gathered, families watched, strangers stared. Everyone knew what was coming. The victim knew. The crowd knew. The waiting became part of the punishment. Every step created anticipation. Every glance reinforced helplessness. The Roman state understood that fear spreads through imagination far faster than physical pain spreads through direct experience. The real audience was never just the condemned person. The audience was society. A single execution could terrify thousands. People carried the image home. They remembered it for years. The punishment continued inside their minds long after the event ended. Why was that so effective? Because your imagination is often more powerful than reality. Modern research supports this idea. The psychologist Daniel Ellsberg discovered that people frequently prefer a known danger over an unknown one. Uncertainty feels threatening. Even when the actual risk is smaller, Roman punishment exploited that weakness perfectly. The victim feared the future. The crowd feared becoming the victim. Everyone participated in the psychological effect. Case 2 takes you into medieval dungeons. Popular culture portrays dungeons as simple prison cells. The reality was far worse. Many dungeons attacked the prisoner's perception of time itself. Darkness erased the day. Silence erased routine. Isolation erased connection. A prisoner could not tell whether an hour had passed or an entire day. Time began to dissolve. Without external references, the brain struggles to organize experience. Thoughts loop endlessly. Memories blur together. Reality becomes unstable. Some prisoners spoke to themselves, others spoke to walls. Some began hearing voices, others completely lost their sense of identity. Who are you when every marker of normal life disappears? That question haunted countless prisoners. The dungeon was not merely a place. It was an environment specifically suited to psychological collapse. Case 3 takes place inside the Tower of London. Many prisoners expected torture. Many expected execution. Some experienced neither. Instead, they experienced uncertainty. Days passed, weeks passed, months passed. Nobody explained their future. No answers arrived. No schedule existed. The mind filled every empty space with possibilities, and most possibilities were terrifying. Modern stress researcher Robert Sapolsky has spent decades studying how humans respond to threat. One of his most important observations is remarkably simple. Humans can suffer from things that have not happened yet. You can fear tomorrow today. You can replay yesterday tomorrow. You can create endless cycles of stress without any immediate danger being present. Ancient prison systems accidentally weaponized this feature of the human mind. The prisoner became trapped not only by walls but by imagination. Every footstep in the hallway meant something. Every sound carried meaning. Every silence carried meaning too. Case 4 takes you to the Bastille in France. The Bastille became famous partly because of what it represented. People could disappear. A person might suddenly vanish from ordinary life and reappear behind stone walls. The possibility itself became frightening. Fear does not require constant punishment. Fear only requires uncertainty. The public rarely needed to witness every punishment. Stories were enough, rumors were enough. The imagination did the rest. This principle appears throughout history. The threat often became more powerful than the act. Once people start imagining consequences, control becomes easier. The ruler no longer needs to punish everyone. People begin policing themselves. Fear becomes self-sustaining. Case 5 comes from Imperial China. Public punishments often carried social consequences that extended beyond physical suffering. The target was not merely the body. The target was reputation, honor, identity, belonging. For most of human history, survival depended on group membership. Your ancestors needed tribes, families, communities. Being rejected by the group could be fatal. Because of that history, your brain treats exclusion as a serious threat. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger discovered something fascinating. Social rejection activates some of the same brain regions associated with physical pain. Loneliness hurts. Humiliation hurts. Exclusion hurts, not metaphorically, biologically. Ancient authorities may not have understood neurons, but they understood outcomes. A publicly humiliated person often carried emotional wounds far longer than physical ones. The punishment continued after the ceremony ended. It followed the victim home. Case 6 may be the most disturbing example of all. Solitary confinement. Different forms appeared across different eras. The principle remained unchanged. Remove human contact, remove conversation, remove connection. Then wait. At first the prisoner thinks, then the prisoner overthinks. Then the prisoner's thoughts become the entire world. Many historical accounts describe hallucinations, memory problems, anxiety, panic, emotional breakdowns. The body remains alive. The mind begins to fragment. Why does this happen? Because humans evolved to exist around other humans. Faces matter, voices matter, relationships matter. Your brain expects them. When they disappear entirely, normal psychological functioning becomes difficult. Even brief isolation can feel uncomfortable. Extended isolation can become devastating. Psychologist Martin Seligman's work on learned helplessness revealed a disturbing pattern. When people repeatedly experience situations where their actions appear meaningless, they eventually stop trying to change their circumstances. Even when opportunities appear, hope weakens, motivation weakens, resistance weakens. Ancient rulers discovered this principle through observation. If resistance seems pointless, fewer people resist. If uncertainty dominates life, obedience increases. If hope disappears, control becomes easier. That realization shaped punishment systems around the world. Pain was visible. Psychology was invisible. Invisible tools often proved more effective. A broken bone heals. A damaged worldview may last forever. That is why sophisticated punishment systems frequently focused on rituals, ceremonies, environments, and symbols. The physical act was only one part. The psychological impact was the true objective. The prison cell mattered. The waiting mattered. The silence mattered. The humiliation mattered. Everything served a larger purpose. To convince the victim that control no longer existed. To convince observers that resistance carried consequences. To convince entire populations that power was absolute. The strategy worked because it exploited universal features of the human mind. Every person fears uncertainty. Every person seeks belonging. Every person needs meaning. Every person wants some degree of control. Remove those foundations and suffering expands rapidly. That truth remains relevant today. The ancient dungeons may be gone. The medieval prisons may be gone. The empires that created them may be gone. But the psychology remains. Your brain still fears exclusion. Your brain still fears uncertainty. your brain still struggles when control disappears. The same mental machinery that existed 1,000 years ago still exists inside you. That may be the most unsettling part of this story. The methods changed. Human nature did not. History often portrays torture as an exercise in brute force, but the most effective systems understood something deeper. Reality is experienced through the mind. Pain matters because the mind interprets it. Fear matters because the mind anticipates it. Isolation matters because the mind reacts to it. Control matters because the mind depends on it. Attack the mind, and everything else begins to follow. That lesson appears in Rome, it appears in medieval Europe, it appears in the Bastille, appears in solitary confinement. Again and again, history reaches the same conclusion. The mind is the true battlefield, and that realization reveals something profound about being human. Your greatest strength is imagination. It allows you to invent tools, build civilizations, create science, tell stories, dream about futures that do not yet exist. But imagination also has a darker side. It can create fear from uncertainty. It can create suffering from possibility. It can transform silence into terror. Ancient torturers learned that long before modern researchers explained it. Today's science can measure the effects. Researchers can study stress hormones. They can scan brains. They can analyze behavior, yet the conclusion remains remarkably similar. Humans are not broken by pain alone. Humans are often broken by what pain might become, by what tomorrow might bring, by what isolation might mean, by what uncertainty refuses to answer. Because when you picture torture, you probably imagine physical suffering. History suggests something far darker. The deepest wounds often began long before anyone touched the body. They began in anticipation. They grew through uncertainty. They expanded through isolation. They spread through fear. And they ended with a realization that rulers across centuries seem to understand instinctively. If you can control a person's mind, controlling the body becomes much easier. That is why the most frightening punishments in history were so often designed to break your mind first.